Welcome to this chapter of The Nameless Castle, written by Maurus Jókai, Jókai Mór in Hungarian. I'm Aniko and I'll be your narrator. This is part 1, titled Nameless Castle. Chapter 3, part 1. Enjoy the story. At 10 o'clock the next morning, the old gentleman paid a visit to his little guest. This time the child was really asleep and opened her eyes only when the curtains were drawn back and the light from the window fell on her face. "How kind of you to waken me, monsieur," she said, smiling. She was in a good humor, as children are who have slept well. "I have slept splendidly. This bed is as good as my own at home. And how delightful not to hear my governess scolding. You never scold, do you, monsieur? I deserve to be scolded, though, for I was very naughty last night, and you were so kind to me, gave me such nice egg punch. See, there's a glass of it left over. It will do for my breakfast. I love cold punch, so you need not trouble to bring me any chocolate." With these words, the little maid sprang nimbly from the bed, ran with the naivete of an 8-year-old child to the table, where she settled herself in the corner of the sofa, drew her bare feet up under her, and proceeded to breakfast on the leftover punch and biscuits. "There, that was a good breakfast," she said after she had finished her meal. "Oh, I almost forgot. Has Mamma sent for me?" "Certainly not, my dear. We are going by and by to look for her. The Countess very likely has not yet learned of your disappearance, and if she does know that you did not return home last night, she believes you're safe with the Marquis. She will think you were not allowed to return home in the storm, and will not expect to see you before noon." "You are very clever, monsieur. I should never have thought of that. I imagined that Mamma would be vexed, and when Mamma is cross, she is so disagreeable. At other times, though, she is perfectly lovely. You will see how very beautiful she is, monsieur, for you are coming home with me to tell her how you found me. You are so very kind. How I wish you were my papa." The old gentleman was touched by the little one's artless prattle. "Well, my dear little maid," he said tenderly, "we can't think of showing ourselves on the street in such a costume. Besides, it would frighten your mamma to see you so. I am going out to one of the shops to buy you a frock. Tell me, what sort was it Diana took from you?" "A lovely pink silk, trimmed with lace with short sleeves," promptly replied the little maid. "I shall not forget. A pink silk trimmed with lace. You need not be afraid to stay alone here. No one will come while I'm away." "Oh, I'm not the least bit afraid. I like to be alone sometimes." "There is the doll to keep you company," suggested the old gentleman, more and more pleased with his affable little visitor. "Isn't she lovely?" enthusiastically exclaimed the child. "She slept with me last night, and every time I got awake I kissed her." "You shall have her for your own if you like her so much, my dear." "Oh, thank you. Did the doll belong to your dear little daughter who is dead?" Yes, yes," sorrowfully murmured the old gentleman. "Then I will not play with her, but keep her locked in my little cupboard, call her Feline. That was the name of my little sister who is dead. Come here, Feline, and sit by me." "Perhaps you might like to look at the book while I'm away?" "A book!" interrupted the child with a merry laugh, clapping her hands. "Why, I'm just learning the alphabet and can't bring myself to call a two-pronged fork why." "You dear little innocent rogue! tenderly ejaculated the old gentleman. "Are you fond of flowers?" He brought from the adjoining room a porcelain flower pot containing a narcissus in bloom. "Oh, what a charming flower!" cried the child admiringly. "How I wish I might pluck just one." "Help yourself, my dear," returned her host, pushing the plant toward her. The child daintily broke off one of the snowy blossoms and with childlike coquetry fastened it in the trimming of her chemise. "What is this beautiful flower called, monsieur?" "The narcissus." At mention of the name, the little maid suddenly clapped her hands and cried joyfully, "Why, that is the name of our palace! Now, don't you know where it is?" "The Palace of Narcissus? I have heard of it." "Then you will have no trouble finding my home." "Oh, you dear good little flower!" And she kissed the snowy blossom rapturously. The old gentleman surveyed her smilingly for a few moments, then said, "I will go now and buy the frock. And while you are away, I shall tell Feline the story of Gargantua," responded the child. "Lock the door after me, my dear, and do not open it until I mention my name. Alfred Cambray." "Oh, I should forget the second one. Just say Papa Alfred. I can remember that." When the child was certain that the old gentleman had left the house, she began hastily to search the room. She peered into every corner and crevice. Then she went into the adjoining chamber and opened every drawer and cupboard. In returning to the first room, she saw some scraps of paper scattered about the floor. She collected them carefully, placed them on the table, and dexterously fitted the pieces together until the entire note sheet lay before her. It was covered with writing which had evidently been traced by a hurried hand, yet the child seemed to have no difficulty in reading it. When she heard the old gentleman's footstep on the staircase, she brushed the scraps of paper from the table and hastened to open the door before the signal was given, and when he exhibited his purchase she danced for joy. "It is just like my ball gown, exactly like it," she exclaimed, kissing the hands of her benefactor. Then the old gentleman clothed the child as skillfully as if he were accustomed to such work. When the task was finished, he looked about him and saw the scraps of paper on the floor. He swept them together and threw them into the fire. Then, with the hand of his little companion clasped into his own, he descended to the street in quest of a cab to take them to the Palace of Narcissus. The Palace of Narcissus had originally been the property of the celebrated danseuse Mademoiselle Guimard, for whom it had been built by the Duc de Soubise. Like so many other fine houses, it had been confiscated by the Revolution and sold at auction, or rather had been disposed of by lottery, a lady who had paid 120 francs for her ticket winning it. The winner of the palace sold it to Monsieur Perrigot, banker and shrewd speculator, who divided the large dwelling into suites of apartments which became the favorite lodgings of the young men of fashion. These young men were called the Narcissi, and later the Incroyables and Petit Crève. The building, however, retained the name of the Palace of Narcissus. When the fiacre stopped at the door of the palace which led to her mamma's apartment, the little countess alighted with her escort and said to the coachman, "You need not wait. The Marquis will return home in my mamma's carriage." Monsieur Cambray was obliged to submit to be called the Marquis. The harmless fib was due to the rank of the little countess. She could not have driven through the streets of Paris in the same fiacre with a Pekin. "We will not go up the main staircase," said the child, taking her companion's arm and leading him into the palace. "I don't want to meet any of the servants. We will go directly to Mamma's boudoir and take her by surprise." The Countess's mother, however, was not in her boudoir, only a screaming cockatoo and a capuchin monkey that grimaced a welcome. Through the folding doors which opened into an adjoining room came the melancholy tones of a harmonium, and Monsieur Cambray recognized the favorite air, Beethoven's symphony, Les Adieux, l'Absence et le Retour. He paused a moment to listen to it. "That is Mamma playing," whispered the child. "You go in first and tell her you have brought me home. Be very careful. Mamma is very nervous." Monsieur Cambray softly opened the door and halted, amazed, on the threshold. The room into which he had ventured unannounced was a magnificent salon filled with a brilliant company. Evidently the Countess was holding a matinee. The assembled company were in full toilette. The women, who were chiefly young and handsome, were clad in the modest fashion of that day, which draped their shoulders and bust with embroidered kerchiefs, with priceless lace adorning their gowns and genuine pearls twined among their tresses. The men also wore full dress, Hungarian trousers, short-waisted coat with large bright metal buttons opening over an embroidered waistcoat. Surrounded by her guests, the mistress of the house, an ideal of beauty, Cythera herself, was seated at the harmonium, her neck and shoulders hidden by her wonderfully beautiful golden hair. When Monsieur Cambray, in his plain brown coat buttoned to the chin, with black gloves and dull buckle shoes, appeared in the doorway of the boudoir, which was not open to all the world, every eye was turned in surprise toward him. The lady at the harmonium rose, surveyed the intruder with a haughty stare, was about to speak when a lackey in silver-embroidered livery came hastily toward her and said something in a low tone. "What?" she ejaculated with sudden terror. "My daughter lost?" The guests crowded around her and a scene of great excitement followed. Here Monsieur Cambray came forward and said, "I have found your daughter, Countess, and return her to you." The lovely woman made one step toward the child who had followed Monsieur Cambray into the room, then sank to the floor unconscious. She was tenderly lifted and borne into the boudoir. Two physicians who were of her company followed. When the door closed behind them, the entire company remaining in the salon gathered around Monsieur Cambray. The lady seized his hand, and while a blonde houri on his right sought to attract his attention, a brunette beauty claimed it on his left, both women ignoring the attempt of the men to shake hands with the hero of the hour. One of the men, an elderly and distinguished-looking personage with a commanding mien, now pressed forward to introduce himself. "Monsieur, I'm the Marquis Lionel de Fervlon," he repeated in a patronizing tone. "I am Alfred Cambray," was the simple response. "Oh, pray, have the kindness to tell us, the friends of the Countess, what has happened." Monsieur Cambray related how and where he had found the lost child, the company listening with eager attention. All were deeply affected. Some of the women wept. When Monsieur Cambray concluded his recital, the Marquis grasped both his hands and, pressing them warmly, said in a trembling voice, "Thanks, many thanks, you brave, good man. We will never forget your kindness." One of the physicians now came from the boudoir and announced that the Countess was better and desired to speak to the deliverer of her child. The Countess was reclining on an ottoman half buried in luxurious cushions. Her little daughter was kneeling by her side, her head resting on her mother's knee. It was a charming tableau. "I am not able to express my gratitude, monsieur," began the Countess in a faint voice, extending both hands toward Monsieur Cambray. "I hope you will allow me to call you my friend. I shall never cease to thank you. Emily, my love, kiss this hand. Look at this face. Impress it on your heart, and never, never forget it, for this brave gentleman rescued you from a most horrible fate." Monsieur Cambray listened to these profuse expressions of gratitude, but with heedless ear. His thoughts were with the fugitives. He longed to know if they had escaped pursuit. While the Countess was speaking, he could not help but think that a great ado was being made because a little Countess had been abandoned half-clad in the public street. He knew of another little maid who had been treated with far greater cruelty. His reply was brief. "Your little daughter is very charming." The mother sat upright with sudden decision and unfastened the ivory locket from the black ribbon around her neck. It contained a portrait of the little Countess Emily. "If the memory of the little foundling you rescued is dear to you, monsieur, then accept this from me and think sometimes of your protégée." It was a noble gift indeed. The lovely Countess had given him her most valued ornament. Monsieur Cambray expressed his thanks, pressed his lips to the Countess's hand, and kissed the little Emily, who smilingly lifted her face for the caress. Then he bowed courteously and returned to the salon. He was met at the door by Marquis de Fervlon, who exclaimed reproachfully, "What, you're going to desert us already? Then, if you will go, you must allow me to offer you my carriage." He gave his arm to the old gentleman and conducted him to the vestibule, where, among a number of liveried servants, stood a trim hussar in Swiss uniform. The Marquis ordered the hussar to fetch his carriage, and when he drew up before the door, himself assisted Monsieur Cambray to enter it. Then he shook hands cordially with the old gentleman, stepped back to the doorway, and watched the carriage roll swiftly across the square. When the servant Jokai had closed the boudoir door behind Monsieur Cambray, the suffering Countess sprang lightly from her couch and pressed her handkerchief to her lips to smother her laughter. The little Emily, overwhelmed by her merriment, buried her face in her mother's skirts. The maid giggled into her fist, while Jokai bent his head toward his knees and betrayed his suppressed hilarity by his shaking shoulders. Even the more important of the two physicians pursed his lips into a smile and proffered his snuff-box to his colleague, who, smothering with laughter, whispered, "Aren't we capital actors?"